The message came at midnight. Earth time Kim Tai-ho stood alone in his office aboard the diplomatic station, reading the words on his screen for the third time. The Valorian Empire demanded his presence at Keth Prime. They called it an invitation, but the language made it clear. This was an order. Humanity would answer for crimes against galactic peace, or face consequences. Tai-ho was 52 years old. He had gray hair at his temples and calm eyes that rarely showed emotion. For 15 years, he had served as humanity's voice among the stars. He had smiled at creatures who looked at humans like insects. He had bowed to emperors who thought Earth was nothing more than a small blue rock. Through it all, he had kept his composure. But tonight, reading this message, he felt something cold settle in his chest. The door behind him opened. Yunsora walked in without knocking. She was his aide, a woman of 30 with sharp features and sharper instincts. She had already seen the message. "It's a trap," she said simply. Tai-ho turned to face her. "Of course it is. Then why are you considering going?" He looked back at the screen. The Valorian Empire controlled over 200 star systems. They had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. When they spoke, others listened. When they demanded, others obeyed. Humanity had only been part of the galactic community for 90 years. They were newcomers. Children, in the eyes of the ancient powers. Because if we refuse, Tai-ho said, they will use it as proof of our guilt. They will say, "We are afraid to face justice." And then they will have their excuse. Sora crossed her arms. Their excuse for what? War. The word hung in the air between them. Sora's expression did not change, but Tai-ho saw her hands tighten slightly. "The fleet is not ready," she said quietly, "I know. Earth's defenses are still being upgraded. The colonies are spread thin. If the Empire attacks now, I know, Sora." She fell silent. Tai-ho walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, billions of humans lived their lives without knowing how close everything stood to falling apart. Children were sleeping. Families were eating dinner. Workers were building ships and growing food and dreaming of the future. They trusted people like him to keep them safe. "Prepare a diplomatic team," he said finally. "You, me, and 6 others. We leave in 12 hours, nodded slowly. And if they try to arrest us?" Tai-ho reached into his desk and pulled out a small device. It was black, no bigger than his thumb, with a single red button on its surface. He showed it to her. "Protocol Ember," he said. "If I press this, Earth will know we are in danger. Admiral Beak will mobilize the fleet. That could start the very war we are trying to avoid." "Yes," Tai-ho put the device in his pocket, "but I will not let our people be taken without a fight." 12 hours later, the diplomatic shuttle left the station. Tai-ho sat in his seat, watching Earth grow smaller in the window. The blue planet shrank until it was just a dot among millions of other dots. He thought about his daughter, who lived in Seoul with her husband and 2 children. He thought about his wife, who had died 3 years ago. He wondered if he would ever see Earth again. The journey to Keth Prime took 4 days. They traveled through jump gates, ancient technology that the Valorians claimed to have invented. The gates connected star systems across impossible distances, folding space like paper. Humanity had learned to use them, but they did not understand how they truly worked. Another reminder of how young they were. On the final day, they arrived. Keth Prime was a massive station that orbited a dying red star. It was the heart of the Valorian Empire, a place where species from across the galaxy came to trade, negotiate, and beg. The station was so large that it had its own gravity, its own weather, its own cities. Millions of beings lived there, from hundreds of different worlds. As their shuttle approached, Sora looked out the window and frowned. "There are too many ships," she said. Tai-ho looked. She was right. The space around Keth Prime was filled with vessels. Warships from a dozen different species floated in formation. Civilian transports crowded the docking bays. News drones buzzed everywhere, recording everything. "They want an audience," Tai-ho said quietly. "This is not a trial. It is a show." Their shuttle docked, and they stepped out into the station. A group of Valorian soldiers waited for them. The Valorians were tall beings with pale blue skin and forearms. They moved with the confidence of those who had never known defeat. Their leader stepped forward and spoke in the common galactic language. Ambassador Kim, the High Regent welcomes you to Keth Prime. You will follow us. It was not a request. They walked through the station, past crowds of aliens who stopped to stare. Taiho kept his face calm, but he noticed everything. The whispers, the pointing, the fear in some eyes, and the hatred in others. Word had spread. Everyone knew why the humans were here. Finally, they reached the Grand Assembly Hall. The doors were 20 meters tall, made of metal that shimmered like liquid gold. 2 guards pushed them open, and Taiho stepped inside. The hall was enormous. Thousands of seats rose in circles around a central platform, and almost every seat was filled. Species of all kinds watched as the humans walked to the center. At the far end of the hall, on a throne carved from black stone, sat High Regent Morvax. He was old, even by Valorian standards. His blue skin had faded to gray, and his forearms were thin with age. But his eyes were sharp and cruel. He looked at Taiho the way a predator looks at prey. Ambassador Kim Taiho of Earth, Morvax said, his voice echoing through the hall. You stand before the Galactic Assembly to answer for your species' crimes against peace. How do you plead? Taiho looked up at the regent. He looked at the thousands of faces watching him. He felt the weight of the device in his pocket. I plead, he said calmly, that I would like to hear these crimes before I answer. Morvax smiled. It was not a kind smile. Very well, the regent said. Let us begin. The hall fell silent as High Regent Morvax raised one of his 4 hands. A massive screen flickered to life behind his throne, showing images that made Taiho's stomach tighten. 83 years ago, Morvax began. Humanity discovered faster-than-light travel. You crawled out of your small corner of space and began to spread. At first, you were curious. Harmless. We watched you with amusement, as one watches a child learning to walk. Laughter rippled through the assembly. Taiho did not react. But children grow, Morvax continued. And some children grow into monsters. In the past 30 years, humanity has expanded into 17 star systems. You have built warships. You have armed your colonies. And you have violated the sacred boundaries of protected space. The screen changed to show a star map. Red circles marked several systems, and arrows showed human ships entering those areas. These zones belong to the Empire, Morvax said. They were claimed thousands of years before your species existed. Yet your people entered them without permission. Your ships took resources that did not belong to you. And when our patrol vessels tried to stop them, the screen showed footage of a battle. Human ships firing on Valorian cruisers, explosions in the darkness of space, bodies floating among the wreckage. You attacked us, Morvax said coldly. You killed our soldiers. You stole what was ours? And now you stand here pretending to be innocent? The crowd erupted in angry shouts. Aliens stood from their seats, pointing at Taiho, demanding justice. The noise was overwhelming, a wave of hatred crashing against him from all sides. Sora stepped closer to him. That footage is fake, she whispered. I recognize the ship designs. Those are not ours. I know, Taiho said quietly. Keep recording everything. Device hidden in Sora's sleeve was capturing every image, every word. Later, their people would analyze it all. They would find the proof of the Empire's lies. But that would take time, and time was something they did not have. Morvax raised his hand again, and the crowd slowly quieted. The Galactic Assembly has reviewed the evidence, the Regent said. We have found humanity guilty of aggression, theft, and murder. The punishment is clear. He leaned forward, his cruel eyes fixed on Taiho. Earth will surrender its fleet. Your colonies will be placed under Imperial control. Your leaders will submit to re-education, so they may learn proper respect for galactic law. And you, Ambassador Kim, will remain here as a prisoner until your government complies. Taiho felt his heart beating faster, but his face remained calm. This was worse than he had expected. They were not just trying to humiliate humanity. They were trying to enslave them. I request permission to respond, he said. Morvax smiled again. Of course. We are not savages. Speak your piece, human. Tell us why we should show mercy. Taiho looked around the hall. Thousands of eyes watched him. Most were hostile, but some were different. In the upper rows, he saw species he recognized. The Nethera, whose homeworld had been conquered by the Empire 2 centuries ago. The Dralish, who paid heavy taxes to avoid destruction. The Kalani, whose leaders had been executed for questioning imperial law. These were not allies of the Empire. They were victims, forced to sit and watch as another species was crushed. I have questions, Taiho said, his voice steady. The assembly has shown evidence of human aggression, but I noticed something missing. Morvax frowned. Missing? Dates, Taiho said. The footage shows battles, but there are no timestamps. No specific locations. No names of the ships involved. He paused. Why is that? A murmur ran through the crowd. Morvax's frown deepened. The details are classified for security reasons, he said. Security reasons, Taiho repeated. How convenient. The Empire accuses us of crimes but refuses to provide details that we could verify. One might wonder if there is something to hide. You dare question the integrity of this assembly? Morvax's voice rose with anger. I dare ask for the truth. The hall exploded into chaos. Some aliens shouted at Taiho, calling him arrogant. Others began arguing among themselves. Guards stepped closer to the human delegation, hands on their weapons. Sora touched Taiho's arm. We need to leave. Now. But Taiho did not move. He was waiting for something. A soft beep sounded in his ear. His neural implant had received a transmission. The signal was heavily encrypted, coming from somewhere deep in human space. He recognized the sender. Park Yunji, Earth's top intelligence officer. The message was short. Files attached. Use them, Taiho accessed the files through his implant. What he saw made his blood run cold. For 83 years, humanity had wondered about Haven IV. It was supposed to be Earth's first deep space colony, established in the early days of expansion. But something had gone wrong. The colony had gone silent. When rescue ships arrived, they found nothing but ruins and ash. 40,000 people gone. The official report called it a natural disaster, a solar flare that destroyed the settlement. But the files Yunji had sent told a different story. They were Valorian military records, stolen from a classified database. Orders from the Imperial fleet, communications between admirals, and footage. With timestamps and locations showing Valorian warships attacking Haven IV, burning the colony to the ground, killing everyone. The Empire had attacked humanity first. 83 years ago, before humans even knew the Valorians existed, the Empire had committed genocide. And then they had erased all evidence. Confident that the primitive humans would never discover the truth, they were wrong. Taiho took a deep breath. The chaos in the hall was still swirling around him, but he felt strangely calm. All the years of smiling at enemies, of bowing to tyrants, of pretending to be weak, had led to this moment. Morvax was shouting for order. Guards were pushing through the crowd. Sora was pulling at his arm, trying to get him to move. But Taiho stood perfectly still. High Regent, he said, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. The hall slowly fell quiet. Everyone turned to look at him. You asked me to speak? Taiho continued. You asked me to explain why you should show mercy. But I think you misunderstand the situation. He looked up at the throne, meeting Morvax's eyes. It is not humanity that should be begging for mercy today. Morvax stared at him. What are you talking about? Taiho smiled. It was not a warm smile. I have evidence, he said. Evidence of what really happened 83 years ago. Evidence of what the Empire did to our people. He paused, letting the silence stretch. Would you like to see it? The silence in the Grand Assembly Hall was complete. Thousands of beings held their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. "Hi, Regent," Morvax laughed. The sound echoed off the walls, cold and mocking. "Evidence?" he said. "You have evidence? Against the Empire?" He shook his head slowly. "You are even more foolish than I thought, human. Whatever lies you have prepared, they will not save you." "Then you have nothing to fear," Taiho said calmly. "Let me show the Assembly what I have found. If it is lies, everyone will see through them. But if it is truth, enough?" Morvax waved one of his hands. "Guards, remove this creature from my hall." Soldiers moved forward. Sora stepped in front of Taiho, her body tense, ready to fight. The other members of the human delegation formed a circle around them. They knew they could not win against armed Valorian soldiers, but they would not go down without resistance. Then a voice rang out from the upper rows. "Wait." Everyone turned. A small figure stood in the seats reserved for lesser species. She was Kalani, a being with silver skin and large dark eyes. Her name was Thyra, and she was a junior counselor, one of the few from her conquered species allowed to speak in the assembly. "By ancient law," Thyra said, her voice shaking but clear, "any accused party has the right to present evidence in their defense. The High Regent cannot deny this right without violating the very laws the Empire claims to protect." Morvax's eyes narrowed. "You dare lecture me on law, child?" "I dare speak the truth." Thyra lifted her chin. "If the Empire is innocent, let the human show his evidence. The galaxy will see that it is false. But if you silence him by force, everyone will wonder what you are hiding." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Other species were nodding, speaking quietly among themselves. The Nethera delegate leaned forward with interest. The Drawlish ambassador was watching Morvax carefully. The regent understood. If he arrested Taiho now, it would look like fear. It would look like guilt. He had no choice. "It's very well," Morvax said through gritted teeth. "Show us your evidence, human. And when you are finished, you will face the consequences of wasting this assembly's time." Taiho nodded slightly. He raised his hand, and a device in his palm projected light into the air above his head. The image grew until everyone in the hall could see it clearly. It was a planet, blue and green, covered with oceans and forests. Beautiful, peaceful. "This is Haven IV," Taiho said. 83 years ago, it was humanity's first deep space colony. 40,000 people lived there. Families, children, scientists, farmers. They went to the stars because they dreamed of a better future. The image changed. Now it showed the colony itself. Simple buildings made of metal and glass. Parks where children played. Laboratories where researchers worked. A small, hopeful community on the edge of known space. On March 15th, in the Earth year 2147, Taiho continued, Haven 4 went silent. When rescue ships arrived 3 weeks later, they found this. The image changed again. Ruins, burned buildings. Craters where bombs had struck. Bodies lying in the streets, too many to count. A world turned to ash, gasps echoed through the hall. Even some of the Valorian soldiers looked uncomfortable. For 83 years, Taiho said, humanity believed this was a natural disaster, a solar flare, a terrible accident. We mourned our dead and moved on, but we never forgot them. He paused, his voice steady. 6 months ago, our intelligence service discovered something. Hidden deep in an Imperial database, protected by security codes that had not been changed in decades, we found the truth. The image shifted to show documents. Military orders, written in the Valorian language. Star maps with coordinates marked. Communication logs between officers. These are genuine Imperial records, Taiho said. Our experts have verified them. They cannot be faked. He began reading from the documents. Order 7749. Issued by Admiral Zenth of the 3rd Imperial Fleet. Quote, the human colony at coordinates. 447b represents an unacceptable expansion into future Imperial territory. Recommend immediate removal of all human presence. No survivors. The hall was utterly silent now. No one moved. No one breathed. The attack took 4 hours, Taiho said. Valorian warships surrounded Haven 4, and bombarded it from orbit. Ground troops landed to eliminate survivors. 40,000 innocent people were murdered. Men, women, children, none were spared. He turned to face Morvax directly. After the attack, Imperial teams destroyed all evidence. They contaminated the site with radiation to explain the damage. They planted false records suggesting a natural disaster. They believed humanity was too primitive to ever discover what really happened. The image changed one final time. It showed footage, grainy but unmistakable. Valorian ships firing on the colony, buildings exploding. People running, screaming, dying. They were wrong. Da 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 da. The voice was cold now, hard as steel. You stand here accusing us of aggression? He said, you call us criminals? You demand that we surrender and submit? He pointed at Morvax. You attacked our home. You killed our children. And you thought we would never find out. The regent's face had gone pale. For the first time, fear flickered in his ancient eyes. This is lies, he said quickly. Fabrications. The humans have created false evidence too. To what? Taiho interrupted. To make ourselves look like victims? To start a war we cannot win? He shook his head. We did not come here seeking conflict. We came seeking the truth. And now everyone in this hall has seen it. He looked around at the assembled species. The Nethera, the Dralish, the Kalani. Dozens of others who had suffered under Imperial rule. The Empire has lied to you for centuries, Taiho said. They told you they brought peace and order. But they brought only death and slavery. They attacked humanity when we were weak and helpless. What have they done to your peoples? Angry voices began to rise. Species were turning to look at each other, then at Morvax. Years of fear and resentment were bubbling to the surface. A silence. Morvax shouted, I will not allow this. You will not allow the truth. Taiho asked. Then you prove that everything I have said is correct. The regent's hands gripped the arms of his throne. His advisors were whispering urgently in his ears. Guards were looking uncertain, unsure what to do. Arrest him, Morvax finally ordered. Arrest all the humans. Now, the soldiers moved forward again. But this time, Taiho reached into his pocket and pulled out the small black device. I would not do that, he said calmly. Morvax froze. What is that? Taiho smiled. This is a signal transmitter, he said. If I press this button, the human fleet will know that diplomatic negotiations have failed, and they will respond accordingly. The regent laughed nervously. Your fleet, your pathetic collection of ships is no match for the Imperial Armada. Perhaps, Taiho said. But are you certain of that? Are you willing to find out? He held up the device, his thumb hovering over the button. Your move, High Regent. High Regent Morvax stared at the device in Taiho's hand. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The entire Grand Assembly held its breath. Then Morvax laughed again, but this time there was no confidence in it. You are bluffing, he said. Even if your fleet received that signal, they are days away. By the time they arrived, you would already be dead. That is true, Taiho said. If my fleet was days away. The regent's smile faded. Far above Keth Prime, in the cold darkness between the stars, something changed. The asteroid belt that surrounded the system had always been considered empty. Scans showed nothing but rocks and dust. But scans could be fooled. Captain Choi Minho stood on the bridge of the Earth starship Resolve, watching his tactical display. Around him, the crew worked in tense silence. They had been hiding here for 3 weeks, their ships powered down to avoid detection, waiting for a signal that they hoped would never come. The signal came. Protocol Ember confirmed, reported Lee Nari, the communications officer. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. The ambassador has activated the transmitter. Minho closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, his expression was hard. Send the response code, he said. Inform Admiral Beak. We are moving to Protocol Iron. Nara's fingers flew across her console. Signal sent, Captain. All ships, Minho said into the fleet channel. Power up and do cloak. We are going in. One by one, the ships of Earth's hidden fleet came to life. 200 vessels emerged from the asteroid field, their engines glowing blue in the darkness. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers loaded with fighters. The finest warships humanity had ever built, designed in secret. Prepared for a day that everyone prayed would never arrive. That day had arrived. On Keth Prime, alarms began to sound. An aide rushed to Morvax's side and whispered urgently in his ear. The regent's face went white. Impossible, he breathed. Nothing is impossible, Taiho said calmly. You should have learned that by now. The great screen behind Morvax's throne flickered to life, showing a tactical view of the space around the station. Red dots appeared, hundreds of them, moving toward Keth Prime in perfect formation. The crowd erupted into panic. Aliens screamed and pushed toward the exits. Guards shouted orders that no one followed. In seconds, the orderly assembly had become chaos. But Taiho stood perfectly still in the center of it all. Your fleet is surrounded, he said, his voice somehow cutting through the noise. Our ships have been in position for weeks, waiting. We knew you would try to trap us, so we prepared a trap of our own. Morvax gripped his throne with all four hands. If you attack this station, millions will die. We have no intention of attacking, Taiho said, unless you force us to. On Earth's moon, in the deep bunkers of Defense Coalition Command, Admiral Beak Jisoo watched the same tactical display. She was 60 years old, with iron-gray hair cut short, and eyes that had seen too many battles. Around her, officers worked frantically at their stations. Fleet is in position, reported her aide. All ships report ready, Jisoo nodded slowly. Open a channel. All frequencies. I want everyone to hear this. A light on her console turned green. She was now broadcasting to every ship in the system, every station, every receiver that could pick up the signal, including Keth Prime. This is Admiral Beak Jisoo of the Earth Defense Coalition, she said. We come not as conquerors, but as defenders of justice. 83 years ago, the Valorian Empire murdered 40,000 innocent human beings. They thought we would never learn the truth. They were wrong. In the Grand Assembly Hall, her words echoed from every speaker. Aliens stopped their panicked flight to listen. We do not seek war, Jisoo continued. We seek accountability. High Regent Morvax must answer for the crimes committed against humanity. Our ambassador must be released unharmed. If these conditions are met, no shot will be fired. She paused. But if our people are harmed, if the Empire attempts to flee or attack, we will respond with everything we have. The choice is yours. The transmission ended. On Keth Prime, silence fell over the hall. Everyone was looking at Morvax, waiting to see what he would do. The regent's face twisted with rage. He turned to his military commanders. Destroy them, he hissed. Launch everything we have. But the commanders hesitated. One of them, an older Valorian with scars on his face, shook his head slowly. We cannot win this fight, he said quietly. Their ships are already inside our defensive perimeter. If we engage, we will lose half our fleet in the first hour. I do not care about losses. Morvax shouted. I care about crushing these humans. And what about after? The commander asked. Even if we defeat this fleet, more will come. Earth knows the truth now. The whole galaxy knows. He gestured at the assembly, at the thousands of aliens watching. How many of them will join humanity's side? How many of our subject species will see this as their chance to break free? Morvax opened his mouth, then closed it. The commander was right. The Empire's power had always rested on fear and the illusion of invincibility. That illusion was shattered now. From the upper rows, Counselor Thyra spoke again. The Kalani worlds formally withdraw from the Valorian Empire, she announced, her voice ringing clear. We request the protection of Earth's fleet. A moment later, another voice joined hers. The Nathera ambassador stood. The Nathera Confederation also withdraws. We stand with humanity. Then another species. And another. Within minutes, 6 different civilizations had announced their defection from the Empire. Centuries of imperial control were crumbling in real time. Morvax looked around at the collapsing assembly, at the human fleet on his screens, at the ambassador standing calmly before him. For the first time in his long life, the High Regent had no idea what to do. Tejo stepped forward. "You have a choice," he said. "Surrender yourself to face trial for war crimes. Allow the species you have oppressed to choose their own futures. End this peacefully." He paused. "A fight. Lose your fleet, your station, your empire. Watch everything your ancestors built turn to ash. Die knowing that you could have prevented it all." Morvax stared at him with pure hatred. "You think you have one?" he whispered. "But this is not over. The Empire will never bow to insects like you." "Perhaps not," Tejo said. "But empires fall. History has proven that again and again." He looked up at the throne, at the old tyrant clutching his power. "The only question is whether you will fall with it or step aside and let a new era begin." The regent said nothing. His hands trembled on the arms of his throne. Outside, in the cold darkness of space, 200 human ships waited. Inside the station, millions of beings watched and waited. And in the center of the Grand Assembly Hall, Kim Tejo stood with his hands still on the signal device, his eyes fixed on the enemy who had murdered his people. The galaxy held its breath, and slowly, inevitably, the Empire began to fall. 6 months had passed since the day the galaxy changed. The autumn sun was setting over Sol, lighting the sky in shades of orange and gold. The new Galactic Accord Summit had just concluded, and delegates from 32 species were leaving the great conference hall. Some walked on 2 legs, some on 4, some on none at all. But they walked together, speaking in a dozen languages, united by something that had seemed impossible just 1 year ago. Hope Kim Tejo stood at the window of his office, watching them go. He was tired. The past 6 months had been the hardest of his life. Negotiations, treaties, arguments that lasted for days. Building a new order from the ruins of the old, but it was done. The Galactic Accord was signed. A new era had begun. A knock came at his door. "Come in," he said without turning. Yunsora entered. She was carrying a tablet and wearing the formal uniform of Earth's new diplomatic corps. 6 months ago, she had been his aide. Now she was Director of Interspecies Relations, one of the most important positions in human government. "The trial verdict came in," she said. Tejo finally turned. "And guilty on all counts. War crimes, genocide, conspiracy to commit mass murder." Sora's voice was flat, professional, but her eyes showed satisfaction. "Morvax will spend the rest of his life in detention. No possibility of release." Tejo nodded slowly. He should have felt triumph, joy, something. But all he felt was emptiness. What about the others? Admiral Drellick surrendered his fleet 3 months ago. He has been cooperating with the tribunal, providing evidence against other Imperial officers. Sora checked her tablet. 17 high-ranking officials have been arrested so far. More will follow. And the Empire itself? Officially dissolved as of yesterday. The remaining Valorian systems have formed a parliamentary government. They are requesting membership in the Accord. Tejo almost smiled. The great Valorian Empire, which had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years, reduced to asking permission to join a coalition led by humans. History had a strange sense of humor. "There is one more thing," Sora said. "The memorial service is in 2 hours. Chancellor O asked if you would attend."
At the Haven for Memorial?
Tejo had helped design it himself. A great garden built on the outskirts of Seoul, with 40,000 trees planted in rows, one for each person who had died. At the center stood a black stone pillar with all their names carved into its surface. "I will be there," he said quietly. The sun had fully set by the time Tejo arrived at the memorial. Thousands of people had gathered among the trees, holding candles that flickered in the evening breeze. Humans and aliens stood side by side, united in grief and remembrance. A stage had been built near the central pillar. Chancellor Oyuna stood there, delivering a speech about sacrifice and hope in the long road to justice. She was a good speaker, and her words moved the crowd. but Taiho barely heard them. His eyes were fixed on an old woman sitting in the front row. Her name was Kira. She was 91 years old, with white hair and hands that shook slightly. When she was 8, she had lived on Haven 4 with her parents and her baby brother. On the day of the attack, she had been playing in a field outside the colony. She had watched from a distance as her home was destroyed. A rescue team had found her 3 weeks later, half-starved and alone. The only survivor of 40,000 people. For 83 years she had carried that memory. And now, finally, she would speak. Chancellor O finished her speech and gestured to Kira. 2 attendants helped the old woman to her feet and guided her to the microphone. She stood there for a moment, looking out at the crowd, at the trees, at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Then she spoke. I was 8 years old, she said. Her voice was thin with age, but it carried across the silent crowd. I did not understand what was happening. I saw fire falling from the sky. I heard screaming. I ran into the forest and hid under a fallen tree. I stayed there for 3 days, too afraid to move. She paused, her eyes distant. When the rescue ship came, they asked me what happened. I told them I did not know. The sky had caught fire and everyone was gone. A tear rolled down her cheek. For 83 years, I believed it was an accident, a natural disaster, something that no one could have prevented. Her voice grew stronger. I was wrong. It was not an accident. It was murder. Cold, deliberate murder committed by those who thought they were too powerful to face consequences. They thought they could kill 40,000 innocent people and the universe would simply forget. She lifted her chin, her old eyes burning with fierce light. They wanted us to forget. We remembered. They wanted us broken. We endured. They wanted us to stay silent. We spoke the truth so loudly that the entire galaxy heard. She looked directly at the crowd, at humans and aliens alike. Humanity does not forget its dead. And we do not forgive those who create them. But we are not a people of hate. We are a people of hope. We remember so that we can build something better. We speak the truth so that lies cannot take root. We stand strong so that others may stand with us. She gestured at the memorial around her. 40,000 souls rest here now. My mother, my father, my baby brother, who is only 2 years old. They cannot speak for themselves, so I speak for them. I tell the universe that they lived. They mattered. And their deaths were not meaningless. Her voice cracked, but she continued. From their sacrifice, something beautiful has grown. Not just these trees, not just this memorial, but a new galaxy. A galaxy where the powerful cannot crush the weak without consequence. A galaxy where truth matters more than power. A galaxy where hope can finally grow. She bowed her head. Rest now, my family. Rest, all 40,000 of you. Justice has been done, and we will never, ever forget. The crowd was weeping. Humans, aliens, beings who had never known Haven 4, who had never lost anyone there. They wept for strangers who had died almost a century ago, because grief and hope know no species. Taiho felt tears on his own face. He did not wipe them away. Later, after the ceremony ended and the crowds began to leave, he walked alone among the trees. Sora found him standing at the central pillar, tracing his fingers over the carved names. It is strange, he said, without looking at her. We won. We brought down an empire. We freed a dozen species. We created something new and good. He shook his head. But I do not feel like a hero. Sora stood beside him. What do you feel? Tired, sad. He looked at the names under his fingers. I keep thinking about them. The 40,000. They never knew what we would become. They never saw humanity reach the stars, build alliances, stand against tyrants. They died thinking we were alone in the universe. But we were not alone, Sora said quietly. And because of what happened to them, we never will be again. Ow. Taiho nodded slowly. She was right. The tragedy of Haven IV had become the foundation of something greater. Out of death had come life. Out of injustice had come justice. Out of despair had come hope. He looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships were patrolling trade routes. Alien ambassadors were learning Earth's languages. Children of a dozen species were growing up in a galaxy where the old rules no longer applied. The Valorian Empire had believed that humanity was too weak to matter. They had tried to crush humans before they could become a threat. Instead, they had created their own destruction. "The galaxy underestimated us once," Taiho said softly. "They thought we were nothing. Insects, children, playing at the feet of giants." He turned away from the pillar and began walking toward the edge of the memorial. They will never make that mistake again. Above him, the stars shone cold and bright, and somewhere among them, the future was waiting.